welcome back to Food Prep Guide and welcome back to the Pantry Challenge. It's our last day on this Pantry Challenge and boy has it been eye-opening. It's been fun to see how long can we go cooking out of our pantry, what all can we do, what all recipes can we make and get creative with. It's been an eye-opener for me to see our gaps, see what we need to fill in, where I need to improve. I hope it's been a blessing to you, getting you some good ideas on cooking from your pantry. Tonight's last and final meal is an unstuffed cabbage roll recipe. We love we loved cabbage rolls. We also like the, I think it's called, it's like porcupine balls, but they are a little, not complicated, but long and tedious, and we like quick and easy around here. So all of those flavors that we love inside stuffed cabbage rolls and porcupine balls can be made in this unstuffed cabbage roll recipe. It's going to be a layered casserole dish, but before we can get to that point, we need to cook up all of our layers. I am going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 375. One of our layers is rice, and so I have 2 cups of rice going in my pressure cooker. That's just equal parts white rice and water, a tablespoon of butter, half a teaspoon of salt. Pressure cook for 6 minutes and that will be done and ready to go. Next is our cabbage. We grow cabbage specifically for this recipe and just a couple of others. We shred and dehydrate it for use throughout the year. This morning I filmed a quick clip to show you how I rehydrated my cabbage, because cabbage is one of the few dehydrated foods that I have found just a normal soak in room temperature water doesn't cut it. It doesn't rehydrate up. It has a chewy texture, but if you rehydrate it this other way, it comes out perfect every time. So let me show you that real quick. Easy peasy, right? Okay, so here is our rehydrated cabbage. It is rehydrated beautifully, and now I'm just going to strain out the water and show you how I fry up cabbage quickly and easily. So I'm just going to turn my eye over here up to medium heat. I want it kind of high so that we can get a good fry on our cabbage. Get it nice and golden brown and slightly crispy. So this is how I fry my cabbage. Ignore this over here. My children spilled their grape juice when they were refilling their popsicle molds. But this is how I store bacon grease. Whenever we cook bacon, I allow it to cool down to room temperature, and then I plop it into these. This is just an ice cube tray with a silicone pop outs. Put it in there, level it off, and then put it in the freezer, and rice is done. We're going to let that come to a natural, or let it do a natural release. But anyway, when I'm ready to fry up some cabbage, because cabbage is just not the same unless it's fried in bacon grease, okay? I'm just saying. So I just plop out 1 cube, and I'll see how that goes. I might do, let's just go ahead and do a 2nd cube. It's just going to add more flavor. Okay. Now I'm just going to let that come up to heat, and I'm just going to salt and pepper it, and that's going to fry while I'm doing all this other stuff. Now it's time for our meat filling, and you can use just a pound of any kind of ground beef or ground turkey. I'm going to use a can of our ground venison. I'm going to drain out the extra liquid real quick. And to this, I would usually add 1 onion dice, but I am officially out of onions. We ran out of onions a couple days ago, so I'm just going to sprinkle in some dried minced onions. A pretty good heavy sprinkling of it, because they are not as potent as they are when they're fresh. Then I'm going to do a tablespoon of minced garlic. I don't have my tablespoon, so I'll just do 3 teaspoons, which is a tablespoon. Next is 2 teaspoons of salt. I just got that wet, so I'm not gonna scoop it in there. 1, 2. And to that, I'm going to add 3 cans of condensed tomato soup. I have made this recipe with 2 cans of tomato soup before, which is actually what the original recipe calls for. But this meat sauce with the beef and the tomato and then all the seasonings that we're about to put in, that's like one of the best parts. It goes so well with the fried cabbage. And adding that extra third condensed tomato soup just really makes that meat sauce extra good, extra flavorful. So I went ahead and added an extra jar, but you can absolutely make it with just 2 jars. I'm gonna mix that around, and then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire. Not really gonna measure, I'm just gonna eyeball it. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and this time I really do need my tablespoons, so I need to go find that real quick. So 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. We make our own brown sugar here with just regular cane sugar and molasses. It's extremely easy. We have a video tutorial, I'll link it above. It just allows us to only stock 1 type of sugar instead of having to stock 2 different types of sugar. So it saves us space and money. Just mix that in. And then I'm just going to let this come up to a simmer, a little bit harder than a simmer, while our cabbage over here is frying. I'm just looking at that cabbage, I can tell it needs just a little bit more pepper. So I'm gonna put just a little bit more in there. And since I usually use a fresh onion in this, and dried minced onions are not as potent as a fresh onion, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of this dried minced onion to our My Cabbage mixture over here too. This is one of the things that has been my favorite part of this pantry challenge, is not having what I need and figuring out a different way of doing things. That's been really fun, really enlightening, educational, and I'm just thankful for the experience. Okay, I'm going to let this come up to a strong simmer, continue letting this cabbage fry, and I'll be back when we're ready to build our casserole. Okay, everything is done cooking, so now it's time to layer our casserole. I forgot to mention that with the rice, I had to make another tweak for this recipe. The way to complement the cabbage and the beef mixture, I always like to put beef broth powder, about 2 teaspoons in my rice. I am out. I did a massive canning venison day the other day, and that's how we flavor our venison to get that gamey taste out. So I was out and I used instead a chicken broth powder. But when I type up the recipe, I'll link it in the description box below. It's going to have beef broth powder instead, and it really makes that rice just complement the fried cabbage really well. But anyway, rice is the first layer, so let's get that in. As you can tell by the ingredients that we've discussed, this is an excellent way to get a large amount of food for not a lot of money. We've only used about a pint of meat, and our cabbage was grown, but even if you were to buy that from the store, that was probably maybe a third a head of cabbage that we used. And then of course the rice is a great stretcher, the tomato soup is a great stretcher. Okay, so on top of this rice, we are going to add our meat mixture. I'll just spread that around good, although it kind of naturally does it on its own. Now we just top it with our cabbage. That's another tweak that I had to make, was I would normally use a quart of cabbage, but I only had a pint of dehydrated cabbage, so for normally I would probably do a half a head of cabbage if you were using if you were using fresh. I would shred up half a head of it. This was probably a third to a fourth, and as you can see, it's not enough, but we are out. So as soon as I am done with this, I'm going to go to my canning, gardening journal and say, hey, I need to grow more cabbage next year. That's another thing that this pantry challenge has been great for. It's helped me to see what I need to put more up of, what I need to stock more, what I need to grow more. Okay, that is it. I'm just going to pop this in the oven at 375 degrees for 45 minutes, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Ooh, steam. Okay, we're done. Here is what it looks like, and here is the finished product up close. I think I mentioned earlier that it needs more cabbage. I would normally use a quart of my shredded dehydrated cabbage, but I'm out, so I made do with what I had. I was down to my last pint. So if you are making this with dehydrated cabbage, use a quart. If you're using it fresh, use half a head of cabbage and shred it up and use that as your topping. This is a fantastic recipe. I hope y'all give it a try. Thank y'all so much for coming along during this pantry challenge. It has been a blessing to our family. I hope it's been a blessing to yours. We are excited about all of the new content coming up. It's almost garden time. We're so excited. Anyway, guys, hope y'all enjoy. Bye.